Ears. Observe the parts of the external ear, the middle ear, and the inner ear. The external ear consists of the auricle and the external auditory meatus or canal, leading to the outer surface of the tympanic membrane. The middle ear or tympanic cavity contains the ear ossicles, and the inner ear consists of the cochlea and vestibular apparatus. Let us now see how the parts of the ear are formed. During the 5th week of development, 6 auricular hillocks arise from the first and second pharyngeal arches. The auricular hillocks are located around the margins of the first pharyngeal groove or cleft, and by the 6th week they fuse to form the auricle and pinna of the external ear. Observe the location of the auricle in the 3 embryos shown here. As development of the embryo progresses, by the end of the 8th week, the auricle enlarges and gradually shifts upwards and backwards from the base of the neck to its definitive position at the side of the head. The animation shows successive stages in the formation of the external meatus, which develops from the dorsal part of the first pharyngeal groove. Looking at the embryo from the side, you will see the pharyngeal cleft or groove between the first and second pharyngeal arches. Note the otocyst or otic vesicle, which is formed in the hindbrain region by invagination of the otic placode into the underlying mesenchyme. Let us now look at a coronal section of this embryo. Observe the otocyst, primordia of the developing ear ossicles, and adjacent to it, the endoderm-lined tubotympanic recess. The tubotympanic recess is derived from the first pharyngeal pouch. Now let us follow the fate of these structures in the following animation. The otic vesicle or otocyst develops from the ectodermal otic placode. It becomes larger and differentiates into a dorsal ventricular part and a smaller ventral part. As the first pharyngeal groove deepens to form the external auditory meatus, a solid epithelial plug, the meatal plug, is formed at the tip. During the fetal period, the central cells of the meatal plug degenerates, forming the internal part of the external acoustic meatus. The auditory ossicles, malleus, incus, and stapes are formed, the malleus and incus from mesenchyme of the first pharyngeal arch, and the stapes from the second pharyngeal arch. The tubotympanic recess will give rise to the auditory tube and contribute to the formation of the middle ear or tympanic ear cavity. The tympanic membrane lies at the floor of the external auditory canal and separates the external auditory canal from the tympanic cavity. The ectodermal-lined first pharyngeal membrane forms the outer surface of the tympanic membrane, and the internal layer of the endoderm of the first pharyngeal pouch is formed by the internal surface. Neural crest cells contribute to a middle layer of the trilaminar tympanic membrane. The tubotympanic recess develops from the first pharyngeal pouch. The proximal part of the tubotympanic recess forms the pharyngotympanic or auditory tube. The distal part of the recess expands and becomes the tympanic cavity, which gradually encloses the auditory ossicles, associated tendons, and the chorda tympani nerve. Late in the fetal period, the tympanic cavity enlarges and forms the mastoid antrum and the petrosal temporal bone. At 2 years of age, mastoid cells are present in the mastoid antrum. Semicircular canals arise from the dorsal ventricular part of the otic vesicle, in addition to the utricle and a smaller saccule. The otic vesicle develops into the membranous labyrinth of the inner ear, which includes the endolymphatic duct, semicircular ducts, and utricle. A cartilaginous capsule, the otic capsule, develops from mesenchyme around the membranous labyrinth and later ossifies within the petrous temporal bone. Let us revisit the inner ear, which is the first of the 3 parts of the ears to form. A cross-section of this embryo in the hindbrain region shows the otic placode. The otic placodes are formed from localized thickening of surface ectoderm in the hindbrain region. Each otic placode invaginates and sinks deep into the underlying mesenchyme to form an otic vesicle, primordium of the membranous labyrinth. The dorsal utricular part of the otic vesicle gives rise to a small endolymphatic diverticulum, endolymphatic sac, utricle, and semicircular ducts. The ventral saccular part gives rise to the saccule and a tubular diverticulum, the cochlear duct, which elongates and coils to form the membranous cochlea. The ductus reunions connects the cochlear duct and saccule.